Sorry about springing this meeting. Our offshore geologists to kind of walk you through the possible outcomes.
There was any other outcome but one, Tommy.
Well, that's why we're here. This is Charles Newsom. He's a geologist who specializes in offshore drilling.
And who do you work for?
I work for you, ma'am.
I thought we didn't know about this offshore rig.
I work the Permian for you, ma'am.
Well, there's not a lot of ocean out there.
No, ma'am, there's not. I worked deep water rigs for
BP
BP
and,
Gulf, near your proposed drilling site.
So you know the area.
I know it well, ma'am, yes.
We've got Nate.
Hello, Cammy.
Hey there, Nate.
Yeah, go ahead. Sure.
Taylor Sheridan just handed us a Season 3 setup that looks like peace on the surface. And if you've watched even 5 minutes of his work, you already know that's the most dangerous sign of all. Season 2 of Landman ended in a way that should have felt satisfying. The deals were done, the dust had settled, and for a brief moment, it actually looked like these people had figured something out. Tommy had a plan. Cooper had a future. Even the relationships that spent 2 seasons falling apart seemed to be finding their footing again. And that's exactly the problem. Because Taylor Sheridan doesn't write happy endings. He writes the illusion of happy endings. And then he waits for you to get comfortable before he pulls the floor out from under you. Let's start with the thing that has everyone talking. Tommy and Cammy. These two have been on a collision course since the beginning, and what Season 2 did was finally give us the reason why. When Nate revealed that Mtex was never actually built to survive without Monty, it reframed everything. Suddenly, Cammy's fight to hold it together wasn't just grief. It was a losing battle she didn't even know she was already losing. And that changes the dynamic going into Season 3 in a way that most people are completely underestimating. Here's what nobody wants to say out loud. Cammy is in trouble. Not the kind of trouble you can negotiate your way out of, and not the kind that comes with a clean resolution. She's lost Monty. She's lost the foundation she thought she was standing on. And now, she's operating in a world where the people she once trusted are quietly moving on without her. Tommy already has. He didn't make a big announcement about it. He didn't sit her down and explain himself. He just started building something new while she was still trying to save something old. And when she finds out, because she will find out, that moment is going to hit very differently than anyone is prepared for. The question isn't whether Cammy learns about Tommy's new company. The question is what she does when she does. Because grief doesn't make people rational. It makes them desperate. It makes them reach for control in situations where they have none. There's a version of Cammy in Season 3 who tries to interfere with what Tommy is building. Not because she has a strategy, but because she needs something to fight for. And there's another version of her who swallows her pride and reaches out to him. Not as a rival, but as someone who's finally out of options. Both of those versions are dangerous. Both of those versions make for incredible television. And here's where it gets even more complicated. If Mtex gets sold or dissolved entirely, what exactly is Cammy's role in the story going forward? Because right now her identity is tied completely to something that might not exist by the middle of Season 3. That's not a small thing. That's a character who could either go through the most interesting transformation in the entire show or disappear from the story in a way that would feel like a genuine loss. She brings something to Landman that no other character does. That specific combination of emotional rawness and sharp instinct that makes her unpredictable in the best possible way. But here's what nobody is talking about. If Cammy disappears from this story, what does that say about what Sheridan is actually setting up for Tommy? Let's talk about Tommy Norris for a second, because the way Season 2 ended for him looked like a victory lap. New company, new funding, new structure, and on the surface, every single piece of it makes sense. He met with Galeno. He secured the money. He pulled together a team of people he actually trusts, which in the world of oil and gas is rarer than most people realize. Cooper as president, Nate handling the finances, Rebecca running operations and legal. It looked organized. It looked intentional. It looked like a man who had finally stopped reacting to the chaos around him and started building something on his own terms. And that's exactly why you should be worried. Because here's the thing about Taylor Sheridan's storytelling that this show keeps proving over and over again. The cleaner the setup, the messier the fallout. Every time a character in one of his stories reaches a point where everything finally lines up, that alignment becomes the very thing that exposes them. Tommy's new company isn't just a fresh start, it's a target. And the moment it becomes visible to the right or wrong people, everything he's built on that so-called solid foundation is going to be tested in ways that none of them saw coming when they were shaking hands and dividing up responsibilities in that conference room. Think about what this new company actually is underneath all the optimism. It's a small operation going up against an industry full of players who have been doing this for decades. Players who have connections.
What's so funny?
It's not funny. It's not
Tommy
funny.
no longer has access to now that he's outside of MTech's. The protection that came with being inside a larger structure is gone. The leverage that came with operating under an established name is gone. What they have instead is relationships, trust, and the kind of confidence that hasn't been stress tested yet. And in the oil business, confidence without infrastructure is just expensive enthusiasm. Cooper stepping into the president role is one of the most interesting decisions the show made in that finale, and not entirely for the reasons that feel obvious. Yes, he's grown. Yes, season 2 pushed him through experiences that aged him in ways that 3 normal years wouldn't have. But there's a difference between surviving pressure and being equipped to lead under it. Cooper has proven he can handle crisis when it lands on him. What season 3 is going to ask is whether he can make the kinds of cold, calculated decisions that the president of a company in this industry is required to make. Decisions that might put him in direct tension with his father, with his team, and with the version of himself he's been trying to become. And Tommy taking the vice president role is fascinating in a way that people are glossing over too quickly. This is a man who has spent his entire career being the one in the room who actually runs things. Whether he had the title or not, Tommy Norris has always been the gravitational center of whatever operation he's part of. Now he's stepping back. Now he's letting Cooper take the front-facing role while he works from a position that technically puts him one step below. That sounds noble. That sounds like growth. But knowing Tommy, knowing how he operates, knowing that this is a man who physically cannot stop himself from being in control of a situation, how long before that dynamic creates friction? How long before Cooper makes a call that Tommy disagrees with, and Tommy's instinct to override it becomes the crack in the foundation of everything they've built together? Nate's role on the financial side adds another layer to this that deserves more attention than it's getting. Because Nate is sharp. Nate is the one who told Cammy the truth about MTech's when nobody else would. He understands the numbers, and he understands what they mean beyond the numbers. But Nate also has loyalties that aren't always straightforward. And in a company this small, in a team this tight, the moment one person's loyalty becomes complicated, the whole structure feels it. Rebecca managing operations and legal brings her own set of questions too. She's capable, no question about that. But capable people in high-pressure environments with unclear power dynamics have a way of finding themselves at the center of conflicts they didn't create and can't easily walk away from. So what you actually have with this new company is not a fresh start. What you have is a group of people who care deeply about each other, who have history with each other, and who are now locked into a structure where their personal dynamics have direct professional consequences. That is not a stable foundation. That is a pressure cooker with a very pleasant-looking exterior. And Season 3 is going to turn up the heat on it in ways that will make the internal conflicts of MTech's look like a disagreement over lunch orders. Then there's the external pressure that nobody inside this new company is fully accounting for yet. The oil industry doesn't welcome new entrants warmly. It tolerates them until they become inconvenient, and then it finds ways to make things very difficult very quickly. Tommy knows this better than anyone. He's been on both sides of that dynamic. But knowing something intellectually and experiencing it when it's your own company on the line are two completely different things. The funding from Galeno gives them runway. It does not give them immunity. And there are people in this industry, people we may not have even met yet, who are going to look at what Tommy is building and decide they have a problem with it before Season 3 even hits its midpoint. Which brings up the question that should be keeping everyone up at night. If the pressure on Tommy's new company comes from outside and inside at the same time, who in that inner circle breaks first? If you thought the business side of Landman Season 3 was going to be the most complicated thing to follow, the personal lives of these characters are about to remind you that Taylor Sheridan has never once in his career let a wedding happen without turning it into something you were not emotionally prepared for. And heading into Season 3, there are not one but two relationships moving toward major milestones, which in the language of this show translates directly into two very different kinds of incoming disaster. Let's start with Tommy and Angela, because this reunion is the kind of storytelling decision that sounds romantic in a press summary and feels absolutely chaotic when you actually think about what these two people are. Their relationship has never been built on stability. It has been built on chemistry, on history, on the specific kind of pull that exists between two people who know each other too well to walk away and not well enough to stop hurting each other. Getting married again doesn't change the architecture of who they are. It just gives their chaos a new address. And the thing about Tommy and Angela remarrying is that it's not going to make either of them softer. If anything, it's going to raise the stakes of every conflict between them, because now there's a formal commitment sitting on top of all that unresolved tension. And formal commitments in Taylor Sheridan's world have a way of becoming the most expensive thing a character ever signed up for. Angela has always been the character who sees Tommy most clearly and loves him anyway, which sounds sweet until you realize that loving someone clearly and accepting what they do are two completely different things. Tommy is about to throw himself into building a new company with everything he has. That means late nights, high-pressure decisions, moments where the company comes first and everything else comes second. Angela knows this pattern. She's lived inside it. And remarrying him means she's choosing to live inside it again, which raises a question that the show is going to have to answer. Is she doing this because she believes he's changed, or because she's decided she can live with the version of him that hasn't? Because those two answers lead to very different places by the middle of Season 3. And then there's the tension that comes from outside the marriage. Tommy's world is not a safe world. It never has been. The people he does business with are not the kind of people who stay politely in their lane when things go sideways. If his new company starts making noise, and based on what we saw in the finale, it will, then Angela becomes relevant to that world in ways she might not be prepared for. In Taylor Sheridan's stories, the people closest to the main character are never just background. They're leverage. And Angela, as Tommy's wife, becomes the most accessible point of leverage anyone who wants to pressure him could possibly ask for. Now let's talk about Cooper and Ariana, because this is the relationship that Season 3 is going to use to deliver some of its most emotionally complex storytelling, and not in the way that a straightforward love story would. What these two went through in Season 2 was not a normal test of a relationship. The incident involving Ariana's attacker and the way it was resolved, or rather, the way it was managed, left a trail that doesn't just disappear because the immediate crisis is over. Cooper didn't go to prison. That outcome required a very specific kind of intervention, the kind that doesn't come without strings attached. And strings in this world are never short and never cheap. The man who died had influence, the kind of influence that doesn't evaporate when the person carrying it stops breathing. Influence like that gets transferred. It gets inherited by other people who were watching from a distance and taking very careful notes. Someone pushed hard to make sure Cooper faced the most serious possible consequences for what happened. And that kind of motivated pressure doesn't come from nowhere. It comes from somewhere specific, from someone with a reason, and that reason didn't get resolved in the finale. It just got quiet. And quiet, in Taylor Sheridan's storytelling, is never the same as gone. So Cooper and Ariana's wedding, which should be the moment where two young people who survived something genuinely terrible finally get to exhale, is almost certainly going to be shadowed by something neither of them can fully see yet. There's a version of that wedding where it happens, and it's beautiful and it feels earned, and then something walks through the door that reminds everyone in that room that the past in this story doesn't stay in the past. And there's another version where the threat makes itself known before they even get to the ceremony, turning what should have been a celebration into a negotiation. Either way, joy in Landman has always come with a price tag, and Cooper and Ariana are about to find out exactly what theirs is. What makes all of this even more layered is how these two relationships, Tommy and Angela on one side, Cooper and Ariana on the other, are going to interact with each other in Season 3. Because these are not separate storylines running on parallel tracks. These are families. These are people whose personal choices directly affect each other's professional decisions, and whose professional decisions directly affect each other's personal lives. Tommy's company puts Cooper in a position of authority that changes how Cooper relates to his father. That change is going to ripple into how Cooper handles pressure at home. And how Cooper handles pressure at home is going to affect how Ariana navigates a situation that is already more dangerous than she fully realizes. As for when all of this actually lands on our screens, the timeline is starting to become clearer. The renewal came in late 2025. Production is expected to get underway in spring 2026. If the schedule holds and the pattern from previous seasons gives us any indication, a late fall release window seems like the most realistic target, somewhere in the range of November, though anyone who has followed a Taylor Sheridan production knows that timelines in this world are always subject to the kind of last-minute changes that nobody announces until they're already happening. What we do know is that everything is in place for a season that doesn't ease you in. Season 3 of Landman is going to start with the pressure already built up, and it is going to find new ways to apply it to every single character we've spent 2 seasons caring about. The calm that the finale gave us wasn't a reward, it was a running start. And the only real question left is, when Taylor Sheridan finally shows his hand, which one of these characters is going to be holding the bill for all that peace they thought they had earned?